Well, I've always been one since childhood to look for someone older to be a mentor for me. And I'd love to have mentors. And so as I get older, I get fewer and fewer mentors. Yeah, a couple of mine today, Lester is one of those, and our next speaker is one of those as well. Gary Silper, who I'm sure is going to share a rich history of his family with us.
Okay. My name is Gary Silper. I'm the last of Ralph Silver's clan. My brother Maurice, many of you people from Lamoni know or knew, passed away just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Ready? Okay. It's been a little difficult for me because when you try to encapsulate about 50 years of service for the Silver and Roberts service station was open in just a few minutes, it's kind of hard to do, but I would like to not only let you know a little bit about the people that work there, but also about the people that came and used the garage. How many of you know what the difference is between a filling station and a service station? Anybody would like?
Filling station is where you get gas. Service station will provide you with probably radiator, battery, and even the full comprehensive mechanical repairs.
Right. And my father and Paul Roberts owned the only service station in town. You could get your gas there, but you could also, if your car broke down, they would take the engine and repair it. And if you had a wreck, they had a body shop also. So the main things that we did, of course, and the main things that Dad did was to learn how to vulcanize the tires and fix flat tires, repair the inner tubes, and later on use plugs and so forth for tubeless tires. How many of you can tell me what kind of materials the tires were made of when they first came out? Most of you would probably say rubber, but it wasn't. It was canvas, and Dad talked about that. He didn't graduate from high school, and he'd gone down to his older brother Howard had gone down to Kansas City and had a job at a filling station or a service station. I'm not sure which. And he called back and he told my father that summer that they had a job for a night person. And so Dad went down and worked as a night person there. But before that, there's a little lapse in here because when after he got back from Kansas City, he went to he said he and a friend of his decided that they would join the Army and help save democracy during the First World War. I think Dad's father, I don't know, you can put a picture up any time of Silver and Roberts, the place that we were talking about where he did most of his work. In order to tell a story, I think it's important to know the people that were involved and a little bit about their life. Dad was, there was a family of three boys. It was Howard Silver, Ralph Silver, and Claire, younger brother Claire. And when, like I said, when Dad left Lamoni for the first time, he went to Kansas City for a while, and he was working in the station down there. He said he had to rent a apartment, and he tried to save $5 a week for personal expenses. He made $20 a week at that job. So he rented and he had to eat, and it's unbelievable to me that you could survive on that little amount of money. He was an adventurous type person. When he got through in Kansas City, he moved his grandfather, who was a Mayhew, had passed away, so he moved back. He came back to Lamoni, and he said that he actually met another person, and they decided, instead of going to work right away, that he would maybe like a little adventure. And he had purchased a canoe, and maybe some of you heard this story before. He purchased a canoe, and they decided that they'd take a little trip down the Grand River, and they ended up in St. Louis, Missouri. Every night, they would stop at a place, and Dad would mail a 1-cent postcard back to his father, Joseph Templeton Silver, who was a very early immigrant to Lamoni. Anyway, they said they had several interesting things happen. They decided that they would, the Grand River was at almost flood stage, and they decided that they would, when they got down to where it teamed up with the other fork of the Grand River, they decided that they would go right next to a bridge abutment and go through. And they said on this other side of that abutment was a whirlpool about 12 or 15 feet around. And they got caught up in the vortex of that and paddled like crazy to get away. And when they finally did, he said they went over to the bank of the river, and the other man that was with him was a smoker. And they grabbed a hold of willow branches and tried to steady themselves. And he said, "We almost didn't make it, Ralph." But they did. Another time, they went over a low-head dam that they didn't even know was there, but it was at flood stage, and the canoe did not tip over, luckily. Met up, after they got all the way down there, they met up with a person that said a crew on the river that called it a snag boat on the Mississippi. And they counted up and they figured out how many miles that it was that they had traveled in the 3 weeks that they were on the river. It was 700 and some miles. They also said that it was quite an interesting trip because when they got there, they loaded the canoe onto a flatbed and sent it back to Lamoni, which had a railroad at that time. And they had spent a total of $7 a piece on that whole 3-week trip. They'd stop and buy stuff at the little towns nearby. When they got back, he had a job with a company called Haugen and Midgordon, who owned the building. Would be just west of the bank, the same size of road. It's now, I don't know what the name of that building is. There used to be white apartments in the upstairs. I remember when I was a child, before the new church was built, which had the Sunday school classes. And I used to go there once in a while, even though I wasn't a member. In the progress of Dad's not only working at Silver Roberts, but helping to build and maintain it, there were several families that were supported by Silver and Roberts. The main work was tire work, and sometimes some part of it, of course, it was selling the gasoline. The tires, at one time, they had a Chevrolet dealership in the Quonset hut that now serves, I believe, as a laundromat back behind. The place where Silver Roberts is or was, back behind it is the Quonset hut that used to be a Chevrolet dealership built by Bud Downey. People that worked at Silver and Roberts, of course, was my dad, Ralph, and Paul Roberts. And there's not too much known, I don't think, about Paul, except when he and Dad first started, they bought a little place that had tires and batteries and did a little bit of repair on new cars. His dad was born in 1892, and he said he can remember when cars came about, bicycles, radios, airplanes, and so he lived to be 2 weeks shy of 102 years old when he died. But they had Paul Roberts, Ralph Silver, a guy by the name of Red Harrington, lived down on the Missouri line, who was a mechanic. A man by the name of Mike Hutchcroft. Anybody remember any of those names? Okay. Who was a fantastic mechanic. Howard Silver, which is Dad's brother. Lester Evans. Anybody know a man by the name of Lester Evans? Used to live out near Terry Hut, where the river, there used to be a little town out there. And he came in and he was mainly worked on the radiators because the old roads were bad and when the cars, anyway, on cars. Dad told me stories about the farmers coming in with their new cars and the steering wheel would be broken. And they always wondered how that happened. Did anybody have any idea how that might have happened? Farmer would come to home and go to park his car, and he'd go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And break the steering. Really, evidently really happened. And the car wouldn't stop. Oh. There were many farmers that had their cars serviced at Silver Roberts. At one time, I remember her in the middle of the summer in July when it was really hot. The country roads were still dirt roads. They decided that it was time to put gravel on the roads, and so they hired a lot of men that had gravel trucks, and they got most of the gravel from the quarry over by Davis City. Are you familiar with the quarry at Davis City? The bottom of Stringtown Hill is what we call it before you get to the S curve. There's a road that goes north. And at the end of that road, first mile on the left is the old quarry. And they would, maybe 10 or 15 trucks would be working at a time. And the front tire would kick up the nail, and the rear inside dual would be the recipient. And at one time, I remember we had so many tires of different kinds that we were fixing that day that I said, why don't we just see if we can number them? So we did. We marked it on a tablet. Every time you fix a tire, whether it was a bicycle or a truck, semi or straight truck or gravel truck or tractor tire. And at the end of the day, we had repaired over 100. I think it was about 107 different kinds of tires. On a hot day, the rubber was pliable, and it was very. It cost you, I think. What are we talking about? How much did you say that you had to pay for a flat tire? Lester?
50 cents.
How much?
50 cents.
50 cents. How much do you pay for a flat tire now?
$25.
Yes. But when it went from 50 cents to 75 or even $1 for us to fix it, we had complaints from the farmers. They went through several periods of up and down in their work. During the Depression, the farmers did not have money to pay. And I tell people I was the last of 5 kids. I was born in 1933, and my folks were really depressed when I came along. But not really. We didn't feel, at least our family, evidently did not feel the Depression, because if the farmer couldn't pay, they either bring a chicken dinner for the Silver family, or sometimes a hog we could butcher. And so we had our home was just around the corner from Phelps used car lot, the bottom of Town Hill, 109 South State Street. That's where all 5 of us children were born. My grandfather owned the brick house right across from Hy-Vee and where my son works at the veterinarian. And there was Joseph Key. I never knew my grandfather. I was born in 33. He passed away in 1926. But he came from Salt Lake City. He and his father and his father's brother were approached by missionaries from the other church. And he said in England, and they asked them if they would bring over some young women with them. And of course, they didn't know why necessarily, but they did. They brought, I think there were 4 young ladies came with them, and ended up they all got married. So my grandfather was my great grandfather's second wife's child. And when the first wife met the second wife, the first wife left. And the second wife came back, got disenfranchised when the third wife was married, and brought and came back to Lamoni. So Joseph T. Silver was born here, and the second wife actually took care of it. The only street I know of that was named after a person, which is Silver Street, out towards the cemetery. And as you drive out toward the cemetery, you pass Silver Street, and the first house on the right, it's on the north side, or on the west side would be where they lived. Anyway, when Silver and Roberts hired people, there were certain things that they had to learn to do. Of course, the mechanics were paid more than the people that washed the cars and changed the oil, which was my brother and I, Maurice and I. One of the things we had to do every Monday morning was to go out and take the big brooms and sweep the street. You had to go out halfway across the street because the other person that lived on that had a business on the other side swept that point. And you'd be surprised how much dirt and sand and so forth was in the middle of a brick road. It was all brick at that time. And so we would sweep it all the way from the end of Silver and Roberts to the middle of the street. It was in the south where the Ford garage used to be, which is a parking lot now. And we would sweep it all the way up to the end of our building, and then there was a little cafe right next to our building, which is called a pantry. Ran a little cafe about 10, 12 feet wide and about 20 some feet long. And we did theirs too because they were busy doing their business, and they were older people. So Maurice and I would be out Monday sweeping the street, and we would pile it in little piles up next to the curb, and then somebody from the city department would pick those piles up. We had Maurice and I, all the traffic came down Highway 69, way before the interstate. So we would have to jump out of the way when a car or truck came by and then go back out and sweep. And one of the things we did when there was a line of people, we would get over out of the way, stand up on the sidewalk, and hold the broom under our chin, and we'd look up to the sky like there was something there. And we'd watch people drive down the road with their heads sticking out the window, trying to figure out what we were doing. I can tell you that the farmers were especially appreciated in those days. Every wagon had a tire that was a 616 tire. I think that was just the size. And during the war, when everything was rationed, you could not buy a tire. I mean, you could buy a new tire, but that cost almost $10, which was a lot of money. And so then they were rationed. So one time, Dad took me, I remember I was quite young, being born in 33, and the war was in the 40s, Second World War. And he had run low on used tires to sell the farmers. So he got a little trailer and our old 1929 Model A Roadster, and we went to Des Moines. At night, I wondered why. And he knew somebody evidently there that had a whole garage full of tires. And I had never heard in my life until that time about something called the black market. Had no idea. I have no idea exactly where we went. It was on the outskirts. We pulled up this driveway. A man came to the door and he had a flashlight. We had turned our lights off before we got to his house. I didn't know why we did that either. It went out in the back alley, and it was a large building as big as this room, and probably about a 15 foot ceiling, and there was all stacks of tires. I remember the bottom tires were flat. They'd been there a long time. We loaded up a whole trailer load of tires, covered it with a tarp, and drove back to Lamoni. And what are we looking at? Okay, very good. Didn't know we had that. Anyway, so Dad had all these tires for sale, and the farmers would come in, and if they couldn't fix it, Dad had a used tire that they could buy. I remember, like I said, I remember they were about $8 or $9 a piece. There's a man with the name of Russell Waller. Have you heard about, anybody know the Wallers? All right. Russ was their father or grandfather. And he was about the coolest guy I ever met, because he smoked a cigarette, and there might be an inch of ash on the end of it. And he came in one time and he had a tire that had a break in the sidewall. When that happened, you would put what you call a boot in the tire. It was a piece of rubber and had threads in it. And you would cement it, you would rough up the inside of the brake, and then cement it, and then put the boot in it, and then put it on a vulcanizer that had a big long plate that was really, really hot. And steam it, set it down, and stick the boot in it. And so Russ said he had a tire that had a break about 3 or 4 inches long. And he said to put a bigger boot in it, he said. So we did. And we put it on the machine and we put the air in it. And Russ went over to the sidewall and what they called a hunker. You know what a hunker is? You just squat down and he had one leg up against the wall and he was sitting there smoking a cigarette. And Maurice was putting the air in the tire and all of a sudden, boom, it blew up and the boot blew out and hit the wall right above Russell's head and came down and hit him on the top of the head. And didn't even lose the ash off his cigarette. And he said, how much is it as a used tire? Anyway, he was, like I said, he was frugal. Another thing that really interested me was the people that I met while I was putting gas in their cars. I saw, I didn't work there until about 1940, the end of the 1940s. Volkswagens were in mode then, and a Volkswagen drove up without anybody driving it that I could see. I could see through the windows, and all I could see was a pair of arms. And a man got out, and when he unfolded, his hips were as tall as the car. His name happened to be Wilt Chamberlain.
Wow.
I met him. It was interesting. I'd never seen anybody that tall before. And then one time, a group of black men came in, and they had a car and a trailer painted like a black and white cow, and white car with all black spots on it. And if I told you the name of the group, you might have heard of it before. It was called the Ink Spots. You ever heard of them? Okay. They came through, and that was all their instruments were in their trailer. And they must have that must have been early in their career. Another time while I was out there working the pumps, a man came in, a farmer came in from out west of town, and he had an old Jeep. He used to be able to buy a Jeep in a box at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. And it was after the war, and it was extra Jeeps evidently, and if you could put it together, you had a car. And he'd done that. They had no top, had no windows, and I don't even think they had doors. But anyway, he drove up, and he had his collie dog with him. It always sat next to him, and he would come and drive and want some gas. And so he'd get out of the car, go in and talk to Paul Roberts, who took the money and took care of things inside the building. And the dog would always move over and underneath the steering wheel and put his paws up on the steering wheel. And sometimes things happen where it's just too good to pass up. And while he was there, the man was inside, the dog was there with his feet up on the steering wheel. And another car drove up on the outside of the pumps. And the man said, I need some gas. And I said, just a moment. I've got a customer. So I went to the dog and I said, what do you want? Regular? The dog looked at me and goes, whoop. I said, I thought so, because that's what you get all the time. And so I put the gas in his car, and these people are looking out the car, a man and his wife and 2 children. And I get done, and I said, and the dog always did this. After I got through pumping gas and put the gas cap on, it would hop out and go into the office where his master was talking to Paul Roberts. So I said, you can go in and pay for it anytime you want. And he got out and went in. And the man, I gave him, put the gas in his car, and I took his money out there. And he said, does this happen very often? I said, oh, about once a week. I said, they only have a small tank in their car. I have no idea what they said when they got a storm. It was, like I said, it was just something that I couldn't pass up. Another time I came out and I drug my foot like a cripple and put gas in the car, and the guy gave me $5 tip. I gave it back. Anyway, but if you can't have fun while you're working, and I think that's probably how my older brother got the name of Horsey, because he liked to horse around quite a bit. But to do a good job, we did. And my father said that at the end of the Depression years, they had carried the farmers about between $30,000 and $40,000 worth of on tickets, and they didn't collect. They wrote a notice in the Chronicle and said that they would be collecting so much, and some of the farmers had passed away, and believe it or not, their grandchildren were still paying. Dad finally and Paul said, forget it. And they had a little ceremony in the middle of the drive and took all the tickets that they had and just set them on fire. Did the same thing at the end of the Second World War. Had another $70,000 worth. It doesn't sound like very much now, but it was at that time, $70,000 worth of tickets that they had a little ceremony and burning the mortgage, you might say. So another thing that I would like to express to you is the fact that the type of people that came were the salt of the earth, and the type of people that had the job of running the place were also that way. A story that has not ever been told that I know of, except privately a couple of times, was when I was about, well, I must have been about 16 or 17, living in that little house right south of the Phelps place. Anyway, my bedroom was towards the highway. The Highway 69 had all of the traffic that came down from the north and up from the south. There was a car that had come around the corner, gone down the town hill, and if you're not familiar, late at night, that's about 2 o'clock in the morning. And he came down the hill, car did, and instead of, not sure, there's a sign there that said you have to turn left, but he wasn't sure, and he missed the corner a little bit, got up on the curb, and he took down a big sign that said, "Welcome to Lamoni, come back again." Not very happy thing. Went through that sign and hit a telephone pole. It's a big old Buick, wrapped the front bumper kind of around the telephone pole. And I remember the noise woke me up. My bedroom was out on that side, the window. I jumped up and I looked out and I saw the car, and I told my father and my mother, who was in the bedroom back on the east side of the house, and I put on I didn't wear shoes really until I was about 14 or 15 in the summertime. Anyway, put on some shoes and a pair of shorts and a t-shirt and went out to see what had happened. And as I got there, a man was coming out of the car on my side, and it was a four-door. And a woman on the other side. There were two women and two men and two children in the car, all dark complected. And it kind of surprised me because haven't seen that in Lamoni there was not too many people of that color. And I said, "Is everybody okay?" Well, the woman had blood running down her forehead because she had hit her head on the dash or the windshield or something. And she was about 8 months pregnant. She was expecting in just a little bit. And we were concerned about that. And Mom and Dad, Dad came out. Mom had the lights on. So I ushered them all into the house, and we called a doctor with the name of Dr. Gammon, Elmo Gammon. You remember him? Okay. Made house calls. 2 o'clock in the morning. And we were concerned about her because she was expecting. And he took care of her and everything. And the two men said they were beside themselves. And Dad said, what's the main problem besides you having a crash? He said, "We can take care of you. If anybody has to go to the hospital, we can take care of you." And they said, "We both got jobs in Kansas City tomorrow, or today, later on this morning." And they had come from Minneapolis and driven, and the man, I suppose, had just driven all night, and he was in a hurry to get there. And Dad said, "Don't worry about it." And they said, "We can't help. They have no car." And he went to the dresser and he picked up something and he handed them the keys to his car, which was a new little Chevrolet convertible. And he said, "I'll take your name." He gave us the name and the address and the telephone number. "When I get your car fixed," he said, "I will call you and you can bring mine back." It took him quite a while. Seemed like almost a month to get that car repaired. And so anyway, they came back and gave him his car back, his keys back, and he gave them, I don't think he charged them anything for his time. He might have charged them something for the material because he had to put a new radiator and a bumper and do the body fender work himself, which he did. And later on, the people in town, the father said, "Who took down our sign?" And they were worried about it, and they wanted to charge him. Dad said, "You will not." So he and I and my brother dug the holes and put the sign back up, probably a better one. And they never said anything about it. So the gist of this story is that the impression of Lamoni was so great on those people that when they came back, the two men came back to bring Dad's car back and take their car home. I asked them, I said, what about the lady that was expecting? Was she still okay? She had a little girl. And guess what she named that little girl? Lamoni. True story. True story. So I don't know what kind of, you never know what the story is going to be when the rest of the story is going to be. There's someplace, there's somebody that has a relative who's named Lamoni. And Dad would get a car, an old wrecked car, and repair it himself. And then after about 2 or 3 of those old cars being repaired and resold, he'd buy a new little convertible. About every 2 or 3 years, he would have a new convertible. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm going to stick with it.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes. Yeah, you're going to have to use that because I don't.
Okay,
Too well.
who got here a few years ago, used to work for my dad in the newspaper in Jefferson for several years.
That was Ray.
That was Ray.
Yes.
And he worked in the shop and he was a good solid printer.
Yeah.
And I used to work there after I was school too, when I was growing up. And the summers, we would go down swimming in the local pool all the time in Jefferson. And we were just amazed because Ray was a fantastic diver. Off the high he would do triple flips and twists, and he had a swan dive, a jackknife, and so forth. He just was the envy of everyone. And I just wondered how in the world somebody from Lamoni like that could learn to dive like that, because I didn't know any high dive there.
Did you ask?
Incidentally, he was normal height, sweetheart in high school, but anyway. But where would Ray have learned to dive?
I asked him the same question because when I was growing up, he could do a wonderful belly flop. And so I asked him, and he was in the Navy, stationed in Hawaii, and he said he had a large swimming pool in a big metal Quonset hut type building, and there was a skylight in it, and they would go up in the skylight and dive through the skylight down. Anyway, he learned how to do all that stuff in Hawaii, and he was good. He could have been a terrific athlete, but he chose to go to work instead, and he worked in the Lamoni Chronicle as a typesetter for years and years, several years, 2 or 3 years. Yes.
Who is Horsey?
Who was Horsey? My older brother. I call him my little bigger brother. He's 2.5 years older than I am, about 2 years older than I am, but he was a little shorter than I was.
Were those gas pumps automatic?
Was there a what?
Were those gas pumps automatic?
No. gas pumps, that was when you had to say, what would you like, you know, regular or ethyl? And may I change your oil or check your oil and everything? They were glass tube, about that tall, and it had a big bulb on the top of it that said regular ethyl standard oil. And you'd measure how much gas there were lines on it, told how many gallon you had put in, and you figured out the gallons and the amount of gas cost per gallon. Yes.
When you drive by that corner now,
I don't look at it. I don't look at it because if I had been here when that happened, in fact, I offered a niece couple of $1,000s to change it if she would. And so I would still do that if somebody would change that into a regular picture of the garage that was there.
the generosity quotient here is phenomenal. Personal question, and you don't have to answer this, but do you remember ever your mother saying to your dad, you need to collect these debts, honey, because we need it? And then the second part of the question, do you kind of remember when the war was over and farmers were able to start getting caught up on the debt to your dad? Do you kind of remember your family feeling sort of flush with an economic boost?
We never really knew that there was a depression because the farmer, if he, like I said, if he did not have money to pay, we ate better. We ate a lot of things that we had, like I said, chickens and pigs, and we had a little, at that residence, we had a pasture back behind, 2 milk cows, sometimes a couple of goats maybe, and geese, chickens, had a chicken yard, and pigs. So we ate well.
Who is that there? On the right. Behind the counter.
Has he got 2 arms or 1?
Two. Can you see him in that picture?
I think that might be my father, but I'm not sure.
What year was that car accident?
I can't tell for sure. Yes.
A friend of mine, Almeida Silver, was married to your brother, and she called him Remo. She has mentioned Terre Haute before, and I was talking to Stu the other day. He mentioned Terre Haute, and I gathered that the Silver family had some kind of camp up there on the river.
A cabin?
Yeah, cabin on the river.
We have a cabin on the river right above the Terre Haute Bridge. Upstream from Terre Haute.
Is that a place where people spend a lot of time in the summer?
Well, mom and dad would move out there in the summertime and stay there until the weather got so cold that the little open fireplace that they had. Dad was 5 years older than Paul Roberts. Paul would not let him retire until Paul was the age of retirement. Dad bought this little place and then had bought an old barn that had been torn down, and went out, and we went out one day and there was a cabin there. So he built this cabin himself. I don't know how many of you live this way, but the older my father got, the smarter he got, and the dumber I got. Okay. If I run overtime, just fill me. But anyway, go ahead. Anyway, he built that cabin himself. I don't know if he had any help whatsoever. I don't know how he did it. We didn't go out and help him. He also built there's a table that's probably half as big as this table, built out of rock, and he cemented it and everything, got the rocks, and he was amazing. Also, one of the things he did, he was not a gambler, he was not a drinker, he was not a smoker. He built the area onto Silver and Roberts, housed the storeroom. It kept the oil and stuff in it, had a plank floor and a crawl space under it evidently, but no way to get to it. And there was a big crack in between one of the areas. And every time one of the farmers would bring in, or anybody would bring in a silver dollar, he would take that silver dollar and put a paper dollar in the till and take that silver dollar and run back there when nobody was looking and drop it through that crack. And he had no idea how much money he had there until they decided that they needed to repair that area. So he went back with a pry bar and opened that up, and they had a little over 500 silver dollars down there in the dirt. And he made a tin box and welded it all up on the sides. It had a little slot in it, and put every one of those in there. A man came by that had what they call, I think, life investors, some kind of a stock, and he put that $500 in that. That's the only thing he ever invested in, I know of. And because the governor of the state of Iowa had his name on that list of people that owned it. And so he did that. And it ended up, he would get notices that it had doubled and so forth. And he said, I don't know what all that means, but when he ended up, anyway, it was $50,000 when he ended up cashing that back in. So yes, Jim, you can get the.
Okay, all I want to know is what was the year of the accident you talked about?
The year of the accident. Let's see, if I was 60, I was born in 33. And if I was 16 years old, 16 from 33, what year would that be?
49 was it? After the war.
Yeah, it was after the war. Why are you asking?
I was doing a search for anybody that had the first name Lamoni. From that period, I found a black woman named Lamoni, but it was from 1940. So I'm going to keep looking.
From where?
She died in Peoria.
Peoria.
In the Midwest. And she had a bunch of kids.
Yes.
Just wanted to make another statement about the cabin. He was in his 60s when he built that, and built probably all that rock from Grand River. And the tires, took the tires down, to make the stairs out of that. And when we were children, yeah, we spent a fair amount of time out there.
Yes. That's my kids. Oh, well, 3 of them. 2 or 3 or 4, 2 of them. And a grand.
Any other questions?
I just want to get the names.
Wait a minute.
Your father. I wanted to get the names now. Your father was Raymond?
My father was Ralph.
Ralph.
My brother was Raymond.
Oh, okay. And Ralph's wife's name?
Who?
Your mother.
Fairnont.
Very nice.
He met her over in Paris during the First World War. He was assigned, he and two other people, as well, a brother and somebody else, went down to Kansas City and enlisted in the Army Air Force Cavalry Division. You can imagine that. They only had biplanes at that time. His squad leader's name was Quentin Roosevelt. That's the youngest son of Teddy Roosevelt, who was killed shortly after he signed up and went to after Quentin signed up to be a pilot. In fact, Dad had to take a Packard truck and go and pick up the wrecked airplane that Quentin was flying in. Another man was that was a squad leader, was Quentin. His company commander's name was Eddie Rickenbacker. Okay. Eddie Rickenbacker came one time and gave a talk at the high school, and I was in that group, sitting there like you are, listening to him talk. And afterwards, I found out that Dad knew him, or he knew Dad. And I asked Dad, I said, how come? I said, did you know that Eddie Rickenbacker was in town? And did you meet with him or anything? And he said, no, we didn't like him very much.
Gary, is Ralph's wife still living?
No, she passed away in 1981.
Well, what about, there's a silver lady.
Fairnont.
Husband was a printer.
Ralph's wife's name was Fairnont.
Well, what's your brother's name?
Maurice?
Printer.
Oh, Ray?
Ray.
No,
Is his wife still living?
no.
Yes.
Almeida.
Pardon?
Yes, she's still living.
She's getting good age, isn't she?
Just had a 98 birthday.
Yeah, 98. I'm only 90. I'll be 93 in November.
She's close to 100, isn't she?
98.
98.
That's pretty close. And she still walks around better than I do.
Right, we got about 10 minutes.
Question. You were living in the house, was it the Marietta Walker house or was it adjacent to that?
That's Felinda's. The one next door.
I'm checking, what, your description came awfully close to where Marietta Walker's house was. I'm not sure if it was the same.
I'm not sure.
There's a house between Phelps, and Phelps, your house, then Walker?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I can't hear you.
All right, then we're trying to clarify your residence next to Phelps, and I think next to Walker, in Marietta Walker's house.
The one where I was born,
Yeah.
that's at Banta. The Bantas lived just south of us. And then there was Carlisle's. And on down the road was a man by the name of Moroni Traxler.
Yes.
John, the Hyde and Greenberg was down about 2 blocks. So anyway, all the traffic that came through on 69 from the north. Another interesting thing that when somebody was talking about the street lamps, I think it was Mr. Jones, they used to have Christmas lights, the full-size light bulbs were red and green and yellow and blue, and they string them from one side of the road to the next. A truck with a crane came up from Kansas City and gathered those lights up. They used to put them from a Ford garage on up through town to past the Coliseum. And he gathered all the lights up clear to the main street before people stopped him. And evidently they didn't have them hung up high enough.
One last comment, then we've got.
That term still bugs me. Acting, Gary, Cotton, Phelps, etc.
Yes.
I still get the heebie-jeebies when I come through
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Is it true that the ice cream place used to be across the street where Phelps's is now? Please.
Well, there used to be a filling station right where the ice cream place is. And they sold ice cream, had a big picture window. And one night a semi came up from the south in the fog, missed the corner, and the semi ended up, the whole cab was in the house, was in the building. And a young boy by the name of Joe Smith owned it, Smith. Joe Smith was asleep upstairs, didn't even wake up. He was evidently a heavy sleeper. There had been a drowning at Home Pond. They used to swim in Home Pond, and everybody went out to check on, see if they could find the body. And he had fallen asleep up on the bank. And they found the body, got it out, and gone away. And he was still asleep when they came there later on. Anyway, there's some humorous things that happened back in those days.
Yeah.